just have to watch this because the moment it kicks off, it starts like looping audio and it drives me crazy. There we go. All right, beautiful. So welcome everybody to May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. JFrog has been on this all year. You guys are the Star Wars captains of the universe. And this is a great day to catch JFrog because you guys are 100% on brand today. But I want to hear who's a fan of the rebellion, who's a fan of the empire. Toss it in the chat. No judgment either way. Let us know. And you can go old school, new school too. If you're a fan of the next generation, let us know. Who's watching Star Wars? Some Star Wars today also. I think isn't the Bad Batch out today, that new animated series? I'm gonna try and catch that. I'm a big fan of all this Disney stuff coming out, so looking forward to that. There's never enough series these days. The side of Captain Kirk. 100% agree. Captain Kirk all day. All right, thanks for humoring me. So I want to let everybody know what I've been working on in the past month. I took the 4x4 method. I got a lot of great feedback on that, and I've pared it down, tailored it to be a start to finish methodology of mapping. So calling it flow engineering. There's a free ebook at that link. I'll get a link posted in the chat. But if you're looking for ways of visualizing your workflow with your team, having really good discussions about what your current state is and where you're going, that's what this book's all about. So I would love for you to check it out. Toss me some feedback in Slack or via email if you can, if you have thoughts. And I would really appreciate it. But I think everyone will find it pretty valuable. This is basically what I've been working on all last year, condensed into a pretty quick ebook. With that, we are going to get to Baruch's talk on security. But first, I want to toss to Ari and let him introduce JFrog as our sponsor, our wonderful and loyal sponsor of DevOps Toronto. Take it away, Ari.
All right, great. I appreciate it. Hey, can I share my screen really quick?
You absolutely can. You should be good to do that. I will stop my share.
Okay, cool.
And if I can, hold on. I always lose this button. There we go. Take it away.
Easy one to lose. Hi, everybody. I'm Ari Waller with JFrog, and I appreciate Steve allowing me to make an announcement about our upcoming global DevOps conference, Swamp Up 2021. Can everyone see the slide I have up?
Yep.
Awesome. Besides this sample of amazing speakers from many of the companies you would expect to see at a global DevOps conference, we're also going to have a pretty cool executive panel as well with CEOs from HashiCorp, PagerDuty, Datadog, Elastic, Alan Fimmel, as I'm sure you all know him, he'll be there, and of course our very own CEO, Shlomi Ben Chaim from JFrog. So we're really, really excited about that. I'm also excited about the fact that JFrog will want you to go for free. It is a free day at the conference on May the 26th. However, there is a third day of the conference, May 27th, which has a price tag of $49, but not for people in this meetup. I'm going to drop in the Slack a link which will get you into our meetup. To the DevOps conference for a 2-day pass, absolutely free. Now, I'll drop that so you don't have to worry about scanning the QR code or anything like that. Last but not least, Baruch is going to mention a raffle in his talk tonight. Baruch has a show notes page that he likes to refer people to. It'll eventually have the video that's on YouTube. We'll put a link to that in there as well as the slides. But I also wanted to show you that today, JFrog is going to be raffling a Oculus Quest. If you haven't tried one of these are a true game changer in the virtual reality world. I never got into virtual reality, but this totally changed it all for me. And what I will do is drop that link for you in just a moment. We do not do live drawings, unfortunately, because of corporate compliance. However, we do pick randomly within 2 business days. I will contact that person by email, and then we will share the winner with the entire community so we can all rejoice with you. So without any further ado, I'm back to you, Steve. Or maybe to Baruch.
I am signing up for that one. It's I love the Oculus Quest. I got the chance to try one out once, and it's been on my list of like, if I ever have reason to spoil myself, that's going to be a major purchase.
Or you can just win the one Ari is waffling.
We will see. I think I've exhausted all my luck associated with the meetup so far, but you never know. You never know. Yeah, with that, I'm not going to throw back to my deck because basically, oh, wait. So really quickly, let me just toss one more thing up, and then I will hand off to Baruch. So just letting everybody know that next month we have Kieran talking about AppSec tools. So we're going to keep security rolling for a little while and look at this from a different angle. So talking about application security and runtime observability. So a different angle from what Baruch's going to be focused on, but we're looking at security again from a different angle next month. So join us, RSVP. The meetup link will be posted immediately after this in Slack, and you'll get a heads up over email as well. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to hand off to Baruch and let him take it from there.
Here we go. So we have kind of an internal competition who brings more people to SwampUp. You just, from Ari, you just got a glimpse of why he is in front with a huge lead on everybody else. This is how he does it. I worked on the agenda, on the program. It's really amazing. I mean, attending this conference and for free of all things is definitely something that you should consider. Let's talk about security and in general and DevSecops in particular. So I don't know if you remembered a year ago, I've been here in a very meetup speaking about Alex. Alex then went through a transformation of a company to DevOps and did a lot of amazing things. And deservingly, they became the chief information officer of this company. And now Alex faces a bunch of new challenges. Some of them around personal information protection, GDPR and such, just caring for a personal record of their customers and users. Some of them are around physical security. That's a very nice incident that happened a couple of months ago with the company that provides those lockers, like Amazon lockers, that were hacked and just opened all of them remotely all across the country. That was an interesting hack, which is obviously dangerous. And more traditional things like, the good old hacks and the 0 days exploits. And I don't know if you heard the news, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was a discovery of a new speculative exploit, kind of meltdown inspector, but even more dangerous, working on an even lower level of Intel and AMD processors. It never ends. And it never ends in this cycle of you need to know that you were hacked, and then you need to make sure that you fix the problem as soon as possible, and then you need to make sure that you deploy the fix as soon as possible. Today, we're going to talk about all three of them, but if we're going back to DevOps real quick, because it is a DevOps meetup in the end of the day, we need to remember that our drive to do DevOps better, to become those elite performers by the scale of State of DevOps report, Accelerate metrics, or any others, is in the end of the day an evolutionary pressure. We are doing it not because DevOps is sexy or because we can get more money, well, which is true, but first and foremost, we do it to nail this deployment part as soon as possible. This is one of the things that is important for us. It makes us more secure. So in the end of the day, our Alex, although they came from a DevOps background, Alex now understands that they need a professional that knows everything about security. And this professional has a name, Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO for short. In order to hire CISO, Alex needs to understand what CISO is and what they do. So they embark on a journey of learning what Chief Information Security does, starting with Wikipedia, in which they discover that there is a thing called CISP. CISP is a Certified Information Security Professional certification that requires a lot of reading, like a lot. And this is just the tests. There is a lot of other materials. For example, CISO Desk Reference Guide. This is what Chief Information Security does. And this is also a lot of books. Alex discovered funny terms like pasta and stride and trike. For some reason, all those are actually threat models. And I listed 3, but here Natalia claims that there are 20 and maybe there are 50, who knows. The most interesting discovery, and this is something that is very useful for all of us as well, is that Chief Information Security Officers come in 2 flavors. There are the engineers that went to specialize in security and made their way to the top, to the Chief Information Security Officer. And then there are the compliance bureaucrats that made all their way to become a Chief Information Security Officer. The dynamics of us engineers working with them is completely different. The way we approach our comrades engineers is completely different than the way that we approach bureaucrats that are there to enforce compliance. And this is something that we always need to remember. When we are going to interact with security people in our organization, we need to think what background they come from, and this will dictate how do we approach them. Now, the role of Chief Information Security Officer is very diverse. There are a lot of things that a true CISO takes care of, being, for example, a business advisor to the CEO, but also training and hire security staff, and embed security information, and et cetera, and what's not. Actually, if we look at the CISP exam, it clearly identifies the areas that modern information security is built upon. You can see here stuff like chapters about asset security. Asset security is how do we protect our passwords? Or software development security. Software development security is we remember to escape all the query parameters in our SQL queries. And security assessment and testing. This is what we do to check that we do everything correctly. Communication and network security. This will be our certificates, our HTTPS, and everything else. And security engineering. This is your secure pipelines and integration with security tools that will verify your software. And then identity and access management, everything from the badges or the tags that people will use to enter the building, and all the way to the logs that you have on various things. Security operations, this is your on-call, security on-call, and then security and risk management. This is a general assessment of threats and understanding of what is more important to invest money to protect, money and time to protect. So in the end of the day, when you look at that, and obviously there are weights to each and every part that are in the exam that we want to believe that represent those weights of those aspects in the real world. And, as engineers and people who come from the engineering background, we realize that there are only a couple of aspects which kind of relate to us directly. The software development security, which is, as I mentioned, how do we write code, and the security engineering, which is basically how do we write pipelines. Only 22% of this entire thing is something that we understand and something that we can relate. Everything else requires other professionals. And by now, I hope, when you hear other professionals, this is what you see. We're talking about a different silo. We're talking about people who live in their own world, who have their own metrics, who have their own challenges and their own goals that not necessarily know how to work with us. And I bet this is your experience with security organizations in many, many companies. Security is another silo. Now, we know how to break silos, and obviously the answer is DevOps. The problem is that there is a very big difference, even if the understanding of breaking silos exists, between people who just say, hey, we want to break silos, and actually the way to do it. So this is what we're going to talk about today. My name is Baruch Sadogursky. I'm the Chief Sticker Officer and also the Head of DevOps Advocacy with JFrog. The stickers part, unfortunately, is on hold now. Hopefully, next time it will be in person. I'll come and spread beautiful stickers all around. For now, the important part of my business card is my Twitter handle. I'm there at JBaruch. Come and talk to me. The most important slide of this talk is this. You go to jfrog.com/show notes, you will find there the slides, the video soon enough, a place to comment, to rate, and the raffle that Ari mentioned, the Oculus VR. You go to jfrog.com/show notes, you will see it first entry, you can go there and participate in the raffle. The beauty of it that you don't need to remember it. It's on the bottom of every slide as my Twitter handle in case you will decide that I'm worthy your following later down the road. Anyway, CISO does everything, really kind of knows everything about everything security. This looks very, very familiar. Because actually what we've been shown there, this many, many hands, is actually those T-shaped people that we are so proud about in DevOps. This is a person that knows everything about everything, but also has the speciality, and their speciality is security. Now, how do we learn about those people? One of the frameworks that we can go and embrace is looking at what motivates them. And what motivates them, if you look at the literature like The Drive by Daniel Pink, will be autonomy, mastery, and purpose. There is also fears from taking silos down and adopting DevOps. And we can talk about how all those manifest in security people. For example, what is the autonomy of security people? Well, obviously, they don't want to be bottlenecks. They want to be productive. They want to be able to prevent security incidents all by themselves without need of anyone else. What is the mastery of security people? Well, the SIP exam give us an idea. They want to learn about all the stuff that helps us to get our organization more secure. And what is their purpose? In the end of the day, is having better security for less money. What is their fear, especially when it comes to DevOps? Well, obviously, if we move faster, they feel that they are losing control. If they cannot stop the world to do their security audit, they feel that the software is flying by insecure to production, and they feel in jeopardy. Right? So this is more or less where they stand. And obviously, as I mentioned, you need to remember, are we talking about engineers who came through security or bureaucrats who came through to security? And they have obviously a little bit different incentives and different motivators to each and every one of those sections. But in the end of the day, if we take the basic scenario of reactive security, is going back to this: identify, fix, and deploy. And for that, they actually need to know all that, as we already spoke. And the thing about those people is that, yes, we think that they are the protectors of the realm and everything, but in the end of the day, those people are in a great personal risk that is tied with the risk of the company being breached. It's the reputation. They will be unemployable after that. It's financial. They will be fired. But also the company risks are the same: reputation, financial, personal data, availability. In the end of the day, the ransomware that blocks everywhere affects the availability, and compliance. They need to be in compliance in order to be able to conduct business, like PCI DSS and what's not. And the problem here is that there are tons of ways to get hacked. The cyber attack is very, very diverse, right? It can be identity theft, malware and viruses and ransomware and phishing and weak password and spyware and what's not. And it doesn't matter how much you invest in all of them. In the end of the day, the contractor that wipes the floor in your server room has full access to everything. And they weren't vetted. They were just hired off the street by your contractor employee that you barely know. So it's for whoever plays defense has to have a perfect defense. Whoever plays offense only needs one successful move. So let's talk a little bit deeper about those aspects of information security. Let's go by one by one, and we already did that. So also we don't have a lot of time. So let's just talk about threat analysis. Threat analysis is fun. This is a threat model explained by Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's done by Tiffany Lui from MIT, and it's a great illustration about how threat model works. When we talk about threat models, we need to identify our assets. In case of Batman and Bruce Wayne, those are the Batcave, Alfred, the emails, and the texts. Next, we identify the threats. The threats are the police, who want to know who Batman is, the Joker, who is the villain or any other villain, and the journalists that want the hot gossip about Batman. Then we identify what threats possess which risks to which asset. And we need to decide, are they low, medium, or high? So for example, you can see here that the police has a very low risk for the Batcave, but moderate risk for the emails. Joker, we think that the vector of attack by Joker will be Alfred mostly, but they also can try and attack the Batcave. And the journalists are a relatively small risk, but they are threats for the emails and text. And then we identify how do we protect a specific asset for a specific threat, right? So for example, for the Batcave, we use a security system. For Alfred, we hide their location. And for the emails and the text, we use encryption. So this is kind of an example of those 3 steps: asset, threats, and protection that are implied, that are actually done for every threat model. What you need to remember is that threat models are different, and they are very context specific. Probably most of the time, you don't need to worry about sharks going through your roof, but if you are in the Sharkado movie, you definitely should. Now, this is all very nice, but we kind of go full circle and we come back to the question of those 22% that we care about: the security engineering and the software development security. And those, as you probably guessed, are Devsecops. Devsecops is about securely doing our job or writing code and engineering our software. Now, frankly, I think personally that Devsecops is a marketing hype term. The reason I think that is that the term DevOps should be sufficient. As you probably know, and that's not news for anyone, DevOps actually includes QA, obviously. But no one bothered to stack QA into the term. It doesn't call Dev QA Ops, and there is no new movement Dev QA Ops. So if Dev QA does not exist, Dev QA Ops, why Devsecops do? The reason is so we will pay attention. It's a marketing trick for us to say, hey, let's see if we didn't forget security in our story. Now, it's exactly the same in the embedding security into DevOps is exactly the same as embedding development and operations. When we realized that the developers and the operations shouldn't be enemies but should work together, this is DevOps. Exactly the same thing is with DevSecops, right? So developer and security, not rivals anymore. Instead, they work together. And this is where DevSecops actually lives, right? The opposite incentives of innovation versus protection doesn't have to stand in the way of productive collaboration, tearing down the silos and working together. If that sounds familiar, that's because it is. It's exactly the same concept. Now, there are obviously those who claim, well, you cannot just run along and do whatever you like. You need to stop the world and assess what is your security posture. And usually those tests are performed just before the time we need to release our software. And if the security people decide that you cannot use a specific library, then it's your problem and the release is still next week and no one cares. How DevSecops solve that? Well, with shift left. And this is a meme for whoever is old enough to remember. Shift left solves this problem by taking those decisions from being very late in the life cycle of software and moving them left on the timeline earlier in the lifetime of software, right? So instead of doing those checks only during pre-release checks, we can do them sooner during code reviews, or even sooner during continuous integration, or even sooner during the development themselves. And here I'm speaking from experience, as a JFrog platform has a component called JFrog X-Ray that does exactly that. We shift left the security to whenever point in time you want, including the IDE itself. And I recommend you to look at those types of software that can create this change. Now, one of the problems is just lack of this coordination from both sides, from the developers and from security. And if we want this collaboration to succeed, here are some tips that you can take to your security folks and work with them together to improve. First, make sure that people know that the security folks know how R&D works, why shift left is important, why their announcement a week before the release, hey, you cannot use this library, has devastating consequences. They might not know it, especially if they come from compliance and not from engineering. For them, it's all like Chinese or magic. They have no idea what's going on. It's your job to explain to them why they cannot come to you a week before the release and say, hey, replace the library that everything is based upon, obviously, right? Another one, so there is a nice book called Make Work Visible that talking about how do you explain processes and flows to other people. Very, very useful, highly recommended. Another very important aspect is automation. When you automate everything, vulnerability scanning, static code analysis, dependency vulnerability scanning, the license compliance, everything that can be automated should be automated, because then obviously you improve the velocity. Instead of validating each and every release, you can actually certify the process by implementation of those automations, and then obviously you move faster. Now, not only that, it also makes easier for the regulators to work with you, because maybe not intuitively, they will prefer you have a certified process than they have to certify each and every release. Now, the question is, what can be automated? There are manual tasks that have to be manual just because the machine's not smart enough, right? You can say, hey, in the end of the day, there are security I forgot the word. Security exploration that has to be done in order for us to know where the dangers are, right? There are those red teams that need to try and breach our software, and there are audits that need to happen. All those are manual works, are manual works. But this is true, but this is as true as having manual QA. Because when we're talking about QA, it's exactly the same, right? We can automate the tests, but in the end of the day, a good QA engineer will find failures even when all the tests are passed. How did we solve it with QA? Well, we introduced exploratory testing, and this is testing that happens with the development, and then the results are automated to make sure we can validate it over and over again for each release. It's exactly the same here. The auditors and the red teams can do their work during the development and then codify their findings into the pipeline itself. There are also very powerful tools that allow us to code those findings into the pipeline. secured by desire services, security best practices, using tools that implement security built-in. Today, when you start a new AWS service, you will have all the policies already configured correctly. You don't need to worry about that for that matter. You can also codify your own best practices in stuff like base Docker images, right? So when you extend from it, it will already be hardened, protected with all the correct monitoring setup, with the honeypots and what's not. So this is how you can automate or encode the wisdom of security people into your software. So not every software engineer has to know what's going on. Now, you will have to have some engineers that know what's going on, and those will be your security champions. And those security champions are very important people that just care about security while not being a part of the security teams. And they are important because as the part of your empowered engineering teams, they will be those that will keep you honest when it comes to, hey, did you implement this or that when we are talking about security? In the end of the day, it's for all of us to make sure that our software is more secure. And this is how you do it. With that, thank you very much. I'm at JBaruch on Twitter, as I mentioned. JFrog says show notes. That's the place to go for the slides, the video, and the raffle. Thank you. We have, I think, time for questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Baruch. Yeah, feel free to toss questions in the chat or take yourself off mute and jump in. I've got one to kick us off. What, in your experience, is like the hardest part of getting started with any of this? Like for teams where this seems like a nice to have or further down the roadmap, what is the thing that you find is keeping them from making progress?
So this is such a great question, Steve. Thank you. And I don't think anyone has actually an answer to a question: when is not too early to start implementing heavy security measures? Mm-hmm. Right? Obviously, some things you do from the beginning. And if you are starting with using the SaaS services or platforms, when you start on Amazon, obviously you get everything inherited to you and configured. But in the end of the day, some point of time, for a while, you can say, I'll take care of it later. I don't have any users. I'm in MVP stage. I have not a lot of users and not a lot of people think of me. And then you go into, well, I'm not very interesting for people to actually invest in hacking me. In some point of time, you need to say, hey, now it's the time to actually review it and take like real measures to make sure that I'm in a good shape in that. And I don't think there is a good answer to that. A couple of years ago, we did talk with my friend Leonid Golnik about how DevOps is a scale in terms of you go from almost no process and all the way through, hey, now it's a huge enterprise and it really needs to have a very well-defined processes. Something in this, somewhere on this scale, security kicks in, and it's hard to say when. There are some aspects that really easy to do from the beginning and the others are not. It's just something that you need to periodically ask yourself, hey, is now a good time to devote time to this aspect? And another one here is, another challenge here is people. In the end of the day, everything in the world is DevOps. If you ask me, this is like, and if I learned anything in 11 years of DevOps, is that everything can be tied to DevOps, including security. In the end of the day, it is about collaboration. It is about best practices of how to work together with the same shared goal of releasing better software faster, and we're talking about better security as a part of it. So you need to talk to people and work with people in order to understand when it's the right time to start really care about security and what it takes.
Do you find, so that scale that you're talking about, I think like that's something that sounds right to me too. I think, we always feel like there's things that are behind us that we've covered, that we feel okay about. And then there's things that are ahead of us that we've got to eventually get to. Is there something like a security maturity model that you like, or some kind of resource that helps people place themselves on that scale, and then maybe have conversations with leadership about like, we're here and this is where, I'd be comfortable sleeping at night if we could make it to this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. There are maturity models, definitely, that you can assess yourself against for security. And not only that, you need to remember that being 100% compliant to a maturity model is not the right goal to have all the time. And saying, "Hey, I'll take care of it later," might well be the right answer. I think finding those good security people that come from engineering background and understand what your world is would be the key to successful implementation in the end of the day.
You're totally right about just enough, and fitting your current use case, because you can't do everything. And every time you choose to do something, you're choosing not to do a million other things, right? So I think that's a really great point. Mike tossed a great link in the chat. I think I've seen before that, I like maturity models as a reference. I don't like maturity models as a, hard and fast guideline,
absolutely,
as a mandate. But I think they can be helpful to sort of like give people an idea of like, what am I missing, right? What are the gaps that I might not have seen yet? What's ahead on the horizon? How can I think about like where I am in the spectrum? So that's cool. Do you feel like any of this, like, is this security getting easier or harder over time? Like, think back 5 years. Is this a harder game than ever because it's more sophisticated, or is it getting a lot easier because of tooling and automation and the tide raising all boats?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think one of the problems with security is about how complex it is, together with how it's out of our sight, and with how a smallest mistake can take us down. This combination of those three is completely lethal. And I think the complexity, again, we're talking about now about hacking on a microprocessing levels of a tremendous complexity that it takes to even understand how this hack was implemented, not even talking about, trying to protect against it.
Yeah, I think what we see a lot with security, and a lot of the stories over the past year are definitely on the human side, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of compromises that are kind of backdoors that get built into foundational pieces of software, but there's probably, for each one of those that affects everybody, like a SolarWinds, you've got probably 10,000 examples of like someone clicking on the wrong thing, right? Or like answering an email the wrong way. So
another problem is that there is
huge.
nothing you can do, right? The SolarWinds are so many levels removed from you to impact its security, but you are, in the end of the day, the victim.
Yeah, I think that's another great point, that brings something to mind to me is this ability of like, once something happens, how quickly can you recover, right? Because we can't prevent everything. So focusing on time to restore a service, which I think goes back to your visibility piece.
This
right?
is right back to DevOps. This is right back to, and this is a great point to make to all those who say, well, we don't need DevOps. We don't need to release faster because we don't have, we don't have competition and we're fine as we are. Our quarterly release that requires 10 hours of downtime is fine with our customers. Why would we bother? And the answer is, hey, when you get hacked and you only know how to release once a quarter, you will release once a quarter because you don't know any different. And that's not good enough.
Yeah, Patrice also had a great comment about security is hard because it's hard to say what we've done that has had a positive impact, right? It's hard to quantify what you've avoided, like the tragedies that you could have experienced with weaker security.
You don't know. You don't know. You cannot justify. Yeah, you cannot brag with your successes because you cannot prove them in any way. Also, how do you justify how much security is enough? Right? How do you know? In the end of the day, it all goes down to time and money, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much time and money you need to invest in order to be secure to a level which is enough?
Right.
How
and
do
I
you
think
start answering
that piece that brings to mind to me the flow framework and flow distribution, right? So this idea that you've got to keep shipping features, you've got to keep building code, but you've also got to pay down technical debt. You have to make sure that bugs aren't accumulating. You have to make sure that you've struck this balance, right, of risk versus velocity, right, and quality as well, and not burning out your people. And so I think it's always going to be, that to me is the infinite game, right? It's like, it's never going to be perfect, and you're always going to be swinging the pendulum back and forth between different extremes and different balances. But I think that's what makes this work so interesting, to use a positive word, but also challenging, right? It's that's why we're all here. We don't like easy work.
Absolutely. Yep. All right.
I don't see any other questions. I'm going to shut up for 10 seconds. But if you've got a question, toss it in the chat. Otherwise, Baruch, any final thoughts? Anything that you're really excited about coming up? Like
I'm really excited
or trends
for the normal face-to-face events coming back. That's what I'm looking for. That's the only thing I care about right now, and I just cannot wait to meet you all in person. Hopefully, Steve will invite me once again. I will do my best performance in person, I promise.
Well, we would love to have you up in Toronto, and I think that this has been another wonderful event, and we really appreciate having you and Ari part of the meetup and so close to this the Toronto family. So hope to see you soon. Hope to see all of you soon, and I hope you have a wonderful May the 4th. Go watch some Star Wars or Star Trek, whatever extraterrestrial fantasy world you prefer, and we will see you next month.
Thank you very much for having us, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.